welcome everyone. Kaya. I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people on whose land I am participating on today, and of the Noongar people of the Noongar Nation, and to acknowledge their ongoing contribution to the city in which we live and the places that we enjoy. And I'd now like to welcome Sally. She's going to give us a short presentation on this year's state NRM grants.
Awesome, thanks very much. Look, I've got a little slideshow here that I will share the screen for. It's sort of a bigger presentation, so there's some bits and pieces that I might just flick through. But if you want me to either come back over something or go through something in more detail, please just sing out. I've given the slideshow to Ingrid as well, so she can flick it on to anybody who wants to have a squizzy at it if I hurry over something too much. Okay, so just a quick little rundown. I'm pretty sure you guys know who we are anyway. We are 100% funded by the WA government. The main program that we're running at the moment is the community stewardship grants, but as well as running the Devolve grant, we do have a different role as well. We're very much an information hub, and we do try to coordinate different bits and pieces. So if there's anything that you ever need a hand with, sing out and we'll see if we can't put the right people in contact with the right people. It's probably something that not everybody realises either, is that we are actually responsible to 3 different ministers. So we are responsible to Minister McTiernan, who's the lead minister for NRM, for Minister for Agriculture, but also Ministers Kelly and Minister Whitby, who are water and environment as well. So when we need to do things, we need to have a long lead time because things need to go through 3 ministers and they need to have enough time to be able to review and approve everything. So the answer to one of the questions that I always get is how come the applications finish in May and we can't start until next year? 3 ministers all the way. But, that's also okay. We know ahead of time that that's what it's going to be, and we also make no bones about advertising it as such. I think both of you have probably applied for these in different capacities anyway, but we do have 2 different grant streams. We've got the smalls and the large. The smalls up to $35,000 and the large is up to $450,000. So we've just got those targeted at 2 different groups, just so then we've got that little bit of differentiation. The big one that's worth noting, when we've got our assessment panel, for the large assessment panel in particular, it's actually made up of 6 people. Each minister, so DPERD, DWER and DBCA have an agency representative, and then each minister also gets to appoint a community representative. So we've actually got a really broad knowledge of skills. And so, you can be rest assured that you've got the right people that are actually assessing the applications. But it is also worth noting that when we're doing these, especially the agency representatives, we've also still got a day job. So what we tend to do is do these when we've either got a quiet day or we're doing them either very early or fairly late at night. So as I'm going through these, the clearer and the more succinct that you can make things, the easier it is to assess and the easier it is to shortlist and then discuss for approvals. Okay, that's just a quick little overview of the selection criteria. It does come down to 4 selection criteria. I won't spend too long on this slide because basically it is in the application forms anyway. But if you ever want to have a yarn and break this down further, please give me a hoy. All of our applications are online. We only use the Smarty Grant system and we don't accept applications any other way. Okay, here's probably one of the big ones, is planning your application. So pretty little diagram there for you. So really just breaking down that, acknowledging that that we fund more things than what you probably want us to fund, but you also have more activities than what we're able to fund. So being able to actually figure out exactly what it is that you are wanting to do, and then being able to align that with the program is going to give you a higher chance of success. Just because you've got stuff that you need funded doesn't mean that we're able to fund it. It's also worth noting that what we're actually looking to do is purchase outcomes. So, if you've got a concept or an idea, that's fantastic, but that's actually not going to be enough to actually get something funded. What we're actually looking for is well-developed, well-planned ideas that we can see what outcomes we're actually going to purchase and how they're going to be measured and evidenced. Okay, this is really just a little bit of a quick breakdown of some of the questions that you really do need to ask yourselves when planning your application. Some of those questions do look fairly obvious, but it is easy to trip up. Figuring out who's actually involved, doing all of your stakeholder engagement, really, really important. There's no point in doing things, citing that you're going to do things in different places when you don't have the permissions in place to do so. Have a think about your risks. It also comes down to how you're able to deliver outcomes. We're not looking for an extensive list of everything that could ever go wrong, but we do need to be able to see that you've thought about it and the obvious things are there. And again, evidence to back up any claims. So that way we can see that it's a clear project, we can see the outcomes that we're purchasing, and we can see that it's both measurable and able to be evidenced. If you're making a claim in your application, back it up. If you're saying that, something about behaviour change shows that this helps a community, if you've got a paper or something like that, include it. If it's in a management plan, include it. We do have word limits in the application form, but there is a little section right down the bottom where you can actually pop in extra information. Okay, really, really important to get your permissions in place. We have multiple applications every year that are looking to do things on either Shire reserves or DBCA land that is otherwise a well-constructed application, but what they don't have is actual permission from the landowner. Now, it's probably an oversight on their part because they know that they have permission, but we don't know that they have permission, and we're not about to fund something that doesn't have those things in place. As you're probably also aware, there's been some big movements around some of the animal welfare, both legislation and policy. There is now an animal ethics committee for community groups in place. So if you have any questions around that sort of thing, either give me a call and I can pop you onto the right people, or bring the guys at either DPERT or DBCA. Really important to get those bits. You don't have to have all of your paperwork, like all of the permits and permissions, all 100% done, but you do need to show that you've either contacted the right people to be able to have those discussions, or be able to show that you understand enough about the process, so then we can make the delivery of those sorts of things a condition of contract once it's gone through, but we can then assign that with the confidence that you understand the process. Okay, when you're writing your application, the application is where you tell your story. The work plan is where you're sort of more breaking down the operational details. So the application is your story. Tell us the story. It sounds so obvious, but so many applications go down at the beginning. You need to answer the question. It sounds so obvious, yet when you're working on projects, it's very easy to get incredibly passionate about projects. It's very obvious from applications that people deeply believe in what they're doing, and you can see that what they're doing is a very good thing and that people are involved, but they don't answer the question that's asked. They're trying to tell us information that they want us to know because it's important to them, but it doesn't actually answer the question. I cannot stress this one enough. If it's worth getting other people to have a check over it. You know, ask people outside the industry, take a step back from what you're actually doing. At the end of the day, answer the question. You do need to be clear and concise. We love dot points. We found it a really succinct way for people to be able to clearly step out their thought processes, especially when you get to the question where it is asking about outputs and activities. If you can dot point that you are, you know, doing this much re-veg, this much fencing, this much invasive species control, you're doing a series of events for behaviour change, perfect, spell it out. You don't need to be overly flashy. A lot of people waste an awful lot of words trying to beef things up and make them sound a little bit more than what they are, or use some flashy language. At the end of the day, that's usually seen through fairly quickly. Say what you mean. You don't have enough words to be able to do anything else. So don't assume knowledge. While we do have a really great breadth of knowledge on our assessment panels, none of us know your area and your projects like you do. So always remember that you still need to give us enough information that we can then put you into a time and a place. And yeah, the big one, don't use jargon without using it, or without explaining it. The work plan is very much about breaking down both the project planning, so being able to show everything against a timeline and give enough details to justify why you're doing the activities that you are, as well as incorporating a budget. A lot of people find the work plan quite challenging, but then once things have been approved, they actually realise that half the project planning has now been done, and it's actually a really, really good tool to be able to work through and figure out all the different steps that you need to take. It's quite often the process of going through the work plan that actually highlights other things that need to be thought of in the process. So while it's a little bit onerous, it does help you to develop a very clear and concise project. There's no word limits in your work plan, so give us enough details. Seriously, the amount of applications that go down because they don't give us enough relevant details. They'll put in project management without actually spelling out what the project officer is going to do. They just assume that things are obvious. You need to put in the details. Things like if we've given guidelines around different pricings, and a regular one that happens is people will put in a price for revegetation, and we do have a couple of outliners in the guidelines of what we expect on minimum and maximum costs. You can go over and under, but it needs to be justified, and the amount of people that will just put in the bare basics without actually doing the justification. A simple one and a frequent one is when you're doing wetland revegetation. Things like rushes and sedges need to be planted a lot closer together, but people don't actually put that in there. There's an assumption that we will know that. Putting in there, these are planted closer than what's recommended because they are sedges, and this is the recommended planting distances, is all that's required in there. It's one extra sentence. It shows us that you understand your project, but it also gives us enough information that we can justify anything that's outlined in the guidelines. So basically, we're just asking us to help you help us, sort of thing. Say what you need to say in the work plan, and just make sure that that you have actually justified what you need to justify. Make sure that for your coordinator's role that you put in as much detail as you can. One of the things that the assessment panel will do, they do go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. And if costs are not commensurate with activities, they will reduce them. It is as simple as that. Review your application. If it all makes sense to you, go and have a yarn to a friend or somebody who's outside the industry. Give them the application. If they understand what's going on, then you're probably doing all right. If they've got questions, then go back. Have you used jargon that you haven't explained? Have you used concepts that you haven't explained? Have you explained something in a way that makes sense to you because you're dealing with the project day in, day out, every day? But once you're outside of the project, then you're not sure of all of those little things that are just assumed. So yeah, it's always worth a revision. And there is that section at the end, so you can pop in anything else that we want to know. So if there's management plans, put them in there. If what you do is refer to a particular article that gives a particular set of information, pop that in. There is room enough to give us extra information that's going to benefit you. Read the guidelines. Can't say it enough. Read the guidelines. There's a lot of information in there. I know it's nearly a 40-page document. There is some pretty pictures. It helps a little bit, but there's lots of information in there, and you do need to have your head around it, so that way you are actually answering the questions that we need, and things will flow and make sense. And that way you're making sure that you're putting in the evidence that you need, so that way we can assess things with confidence, and that we have all the checks and balances for transparency that need to occur too. And that's really the end. I'm very aware that working in NRM, that most of the people that we actually deal with very much fit into this category, and it's really great. It's a great industry to work in because of it.